Hi guys, it's Kelly and I'm back again with another video. It's been a minute. So today I am using the beautiful Peony and the Better Together stamp sets from Altenew. This is part of a blog hop actually for their new Tropical Fiesta watercolor brush markers, and we'll look at those later on in the video. But anywho, there is, if you're watching this on the March 21st, there is there's a blog hop and there's prizes. So the link below to the blog will be there. Here, I needed to start off with my sentiment in the middle. I'm stamping on Canson watercolor paper, and the reason I needed that is because I needed it for my flower placement. So I stamped that originally in a navy ink, and then I also trimmed out a mask from Eclipse masking paper and put that in place because my intent was to do a one-layer card. Not what's ended up happening, but you guys have been around long enough to know that most of my cards don't end up the way they were originally intended. So I toyed around with a couple of the different flowers that are in the set. I opted for the two smaller ones. I just felt like it was a better fit with the sentiment. They are they're quality photopolymer stamps, so they're a little bit sticky, and so they pick up that mask sometimes. Not a big deal, just put it back in place. I am using a embossing bag to get rid of all of my static, and I'm just going right over that mask. You just want to be careful not to catch any of the corners, because if you get the powder on the mask, it won't stick. See what I'm saying? So I am using Versamark ink, and I am going to be doing a embossed resist. It's been a long time since I've done an embossed resist, and it's a beautiful technique. I don't know why I don't think about doing it more. Probably because I don't watercolor that much. Well, I shouldn't say that because I have been doing it more, haven't I? So anyway, here I want, because remember, originally intended was for it to be a one-layer card, so I don't want my flowers to cover up my sentiment. Speaking of my sentiment, make sure your sentiment is dry before you do this. Can you see what's happening to me here? So my embossing powder, the ink from a sentiment, is still wet. So it's sticking all over everywhere I don't want it. Now, if I was doing this in clear, probably wouldn't be that big of a deal, and I would have just covered the whole sentiment with the clear and then just embossed the whole shebang. But I'm not. I'm using white embossing powder, and so it would have turned my navy sentiment into a partially white sentiment, and that would not have worked for my purposes. So I'm using a number 2 brush to just go in there and clean that off, just trying to be very aware of where the lines are for the flowers. But honestly, because I masked it, I don't have, it'll make more sense when you see the color, but I don't have solid edge lines where my flowers back up to my sentiment anyway, so it wasn't like some huge ordeal. It just wasn't that big of a deal. As long as I had it cleaned up off the sentiment, I think I was pretty much good to go. So then I'm just going to heat set this until everything is smooth and melted and pretty, and then I'm going to do some more masking. So now I have the flowers, the sentiment masked, and I'm doing this so that I could stamp some leaves. You know, so many people have commented on my use of the word leaves that I literally don't know whether or not I'm saying it correctly sometimes. Like in my head, I'm like, wait, did you just say that wrong? And then, you know me, I get all distracted because my brain only works, you know, like at a 70% because I'm always so tired. That's my life. But anyway, so I'm putting the leaves down, and then again, it moved my mask, not a big deal. They all stuck together, so it's real easy to just put back in place there. And then I'm going to do the same thing, same song and dance. Embossing bag to get rid of the static, stamp in Versamark ink, and then white embossing powder, heat tool. That's what we're doing. So when I had originally pulled out, I have all 3 of the watercolor brush markers from Altenew, and the tropical one may be my favorite. Just because it feels like such a good, not that the other ones aren't good, they are good. Like they are a good mix, but this one just feels so like bright and rainbowy. And I don't even like purple, and purple wine is my favorite color. So you'll see once we get past here, we'll look at the markers, and I kind of have all of them swatched out just so when I am making a card and I'm picking a color scheme, I know what they actually look like on the watercolor paper that I use. So here, I did notice that the stick on the masks was creating some adhesion for my embossing. Like they were sticking to some of the areas in the flower. It wasn't anything that was really horrible. I just had to go in and clean up a couple of areas. And then apparently I had put a fingerprint on the left-hand side at one point, and I had to go back and wipe that off because the embossing powder was literally sticking to the detail of my fingerprint, like this was a crime scene or something. But just going to go ahead and do that. Now, the paper I am working on is cut to be larger than a card base because I wasn't sure what my design was going to be yet, so eventually I will have to trim it down. So here's the Tropical Fiesta set. This is the colors all swatched out. You'll notice toward the bottom, the Desert Night and the paper bag look like a black and a brown. It's actually a navy, and you'll see because I'm going to use it in this card. I just kind of over squeezed the marker, and so a lot of pigment was coming out. This one on the left is the spring and the winter. Those are the previous sets if you have never seen any of those. Getting into the painting, yay. So my game plan was that I wanted like this really pretty blue background because I wanted to use that navy. You guys know I love blue. Blue is my boyfriend. We've been dating for quite some time now. We're very, very happy together. So what I did was I took the turquoise and I just very loosely kind of drew the outline around my flowers. And then I'm going in, this is that same number 2 round brush, and I'm putting down clean water as far out as I want the pigment to flow. And then I'm bringing the clean water to the line of the color, and then it'll just kind of flow out naturally. And I'm going to do this all around the entire, the entirety of the stamped images, all around the flowers, guys. That's what I'm doing, all around the flowers. So what has been going on? I feel like it's been forever since I posted. I was out of town. I went to Simon Says Create, which was amazing. And I got to meet some of you guys, which was, just the best thing ever. It was so fun, to just be able to meet you and hug you and, like connect with you on a more personal level. Not that I don't. Obviously, we kind of have this back and forth on YouTube. I talk in my YouTube videos. You guys leave me comments. I try very, very hard to make sure that I get to all of those comments because your support is very, very important to me. Speaking of your support, holy smokes, we reached 25,000 followers, which I can't even believe was a thing that just happened in my life, because I've really only been doing this for just a couple of years. Like when you look at YouTube and you look at like member sense, wait, we have to stop for the card because now I'm going in with this Desert Night, this navy color, and it looks terrifying. It looks like I'm just putting straight black on my background at weird places, but I'm not. And I really love the way that it came out. I think the background is probably my favorite part of this card. So I'm just dropping in the pigment right off the pen, and then I'm going to go in and start spreading it out with the paintbrush. It's kind of important that your paper be wet when you do this. You can put it down dry, but you're just going to have, I guess, like some harder edges, where if you put it down while it's still wet, it'll flow out into the wet areas automatically. My paper was only really damp. It wasn't like sopping wet, so I did have to move some of it, but ultimately I ended up really liking how it moved and the way it ended up looking, so I ain't mad at it. You'll notice on the left-hand side and between the flowers, it's getting pretty dark there, and it's kind of covering up the sentiment. Now, understand at this juncture, I still feel like it's going to be a one-layer card, so I know I'm going to need to fix that. Otherwise, it's going to say, forget to love yourself, instead of don't forget to love yourself. And we don't want that now, do we? So I'm just going to go in with a paper towel and blot up some of the darker pigment there so that it's still legible. Then I'm just going to go around and just kind of move out some areas so that, it had like a more natural edge. I let it dry, and that area that I just pointed to at the bottom right is still a little bit wet. With heat embossing watercolors, most of the time the raised edge of the embossing will help each color to kind of stay in their own little reservoir, but it's difficult around the edges, so I wanted to make sure that I was doing the flower up above before I did the flower below to give that little piece of time to dry. I went in with, standby, fresh lemon, crimson, and purple wine. Here's the part where I realized that I probably should have zoomed in like a hot minute ago. Sorry. So I went in and put the yellow at the base of the petals, then the crimson to be my go-between between the yellow and the purple, because we know yellow and purple are complementary colors and they make poo brown if we mix them together. And then I'm starting with the lightest, in the lightest area. So I'm starting with the yellow and I'm pulling that out through the crimson into the purple. And I recommend it doesn't matter if you make the lightest color at the tips of your petals or the lightest color at the base of your flower, wherever the lightest color is, start there. Because if you start with the darkest color, you're going to drag it through all of the other pigments and you're going to end up with something that's very one color. There won't be any differentiation. And what's the point of putting in 3 different colors if you don't want some sort of color variation, right? Right. Okay. So when I did the first one, it was kind of pale, and I was thinking to myself, like, I would really like some bolder color. And I know with my other watercolor markers, a lot of times I do have to go over them twice. So that was like really no big deal for me. So I'm moving on to the second flower. See where I hold my marker? That is the press point to release more pigment. So I was trying to get the cap off of the purple wine color, and I think in trying to get the cap off, I pushed that little press thing, because happy accident, I go to put the purple on and it's just like running out. Just running out of the marker. And so there was a lot more pigment. And I was like, ooh, like I'll blot it up if it looks bad, but let's just like kind of roll with it and see what it looks like. And I actually really liked it. It was a lot bolder. It did take longer to dry. I will tell you that, because I was putting so much more moisture down on the paper. It took a lot longer to dry than the one on the top. But it was a lot bolder, and I was able to achieve the same look by just going in and putting in a second layer on the one on top. So I would recommend doing 2 layers versus just like squeezing the daylights out of your marker to get it to dump like a lot of pigment onto your flower. Going over it twice, you have a little bit more control. So anyway, back to the weekend. Oh no, the 25,000 followers. I've only been doing this for a couple years, and so I was completely like, I knew that it was kind of on the horizon, and that is amazing. And I'm so very grateful. So thank you so much for all of you who come and visit me and leave me comments and just are very supportive. Sorry, I had to move a cord. I don't even know if you could hear that. But anywho, so I went to create. I got to meet bunches of you. It was super fun. And plus I got to hang out with my girl, Danielle, because I was with Neat and Tangled while I was down there. And it's always a good time to see her. And like for us, it's super fun to go and do like the create and take it's and meet the public and everything else. But also then we get to see our friends that we don't get to see very often. So that is also like an extra level of fun and community. For the leaves, I used lime, which is in the tropical set. For the shading on it, though, I used emerald. And emerald you can pick up in either the spring or the winter set. It's the one color that is in both of them. And it's a super pretty green. So I just, put that where I wanted it to be the darkest. Again, now I'm starting at the tips of my leaves, because I told you got to start where it's lightest. And then so I'm doing that. And yeah, then that's pretty much going to be all of the coloring portion. I feel like I'm so rushed. Do you feel like I'm just talking 800 miles a minute? Because I do. But I'm trying to fit in all of this in like one of my shorter videos. This is another thing that I super love about these. If you have a lot of pigment on your brush, you can use it just like a paintbrush and go in and do spatters, which is what I did with the Desert Night color. And then here, the tip of my pen accidentally touched my paper, and so I had like a weird mark, which is a really great test to see whether or not the colors lift up. And it did pretty well. It didn't lift completely, but also this is a super dark navy, and blues are staining usually even with regular watercolors, so I think it did a decent job. Here I'm using some shimmer spray because I'm lazy and I don't want to mix up perfect pearls. So I'm just spattering that on the background. You want to do that portion after everything else is dry, or it's going to run a shimmer throughout your entire watercolor, which is a really pretty look if that's what you're going for. But if you just want those droplets, then you got to wait till everything's dry. Here's where I realized that my sentiment was totally getting lost among all these bolder colors, and that I was going to have to do something else. So I just have some black cardstock from Simon Says Stamp. I'm going to do the same thing that we did before, except it's just on black, not on white. Embossing bag, Stampin' Versamark, white embossing powder, and then this is a trick I learned from Laura Basson, who's amazing, and I totally got to see last weekend, and that made me so happy. So she uses this is just a Ranger like craft pick, and she goes in and cleans up any of those like 1 or 2 dots instead of trying to get in there with a paintbrush. That really does work very, very well. So thank you, Laura, for the tip. Here I've trimmed down the sentiment into a just a square, and I'm going to pop that up on some foam tape right over the center of the card. And then in order to just add some shine and kind of tie everything together, I'm going to go in and do some clear sequins. Clear rhinestones would be pretty, gemstones would be pretty, like whatever you got. So yeah, we're almost done with the card, but I have more stories from Create and stuff that I will love to tell you. And then also I got my hair did, and there's so many other stories. But I will get to them. I have a lot of videos to edit and just not a lot of time, because I need to sleep eventually. So I'm going to put some clear Wink of Stella on there. Again, this is going to move your watercolor markers. Be conscientious of that. You can see me kind of wiping it off on my graph paper here. And then that's it. That's the whole card. So make sure you head over to the blog to participate in the giveaway. And I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye.